Angela Strange es General Partner de Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen Horowitz es uno de los fondos de inversión de capital de riesgo más importante de Silicon Valley y del mundo, por lo tanto. Angela es una de las principales, o sea, lleva la parte de Fintech en Andreessen Horowitz y en América Latina. Es una de las principales inversoras en Fintech en América Latina. Una mujer emprendedora que alguna vez soñó ser atleta olímpica. Y en ese camino se encontró con otra pasión, la de ayudar a sembrar futuros a través de la creación de emprendimientos. El español de Angela todavía no es suficientemente bueno, sé que me entiende por la sonrisa, pero vamos a pasar al inglés. Hello Angela, welcome, thank you very much for being with us.
Hey, thank you for having me, and hopefully live next time.
Yes, we have lots of people exciting to hear what you have to tell us, or what we have to talk. So let's start by you maybe telling us about the $9 billion fund that Andreessen Horowitz just announced. What do you plan to do with so much money, and how much of it is going to come to Latin America?
Excellent. Hey, well, I'm excited to be here, and I hear it's a little bit of a rarity that you get on stage too, Sergio. So I get the chance to also ask you questions, but I will take that one first.
Okay.
Yeah. So you saw we just raised for a series of new funds. Little background, right? The firm was founded 10 plus years ago now on the now famous tagline that software is eating the world. It's the belief that more and more businesses, more industries will be run on software, delivered as online services. And similar to what Noam was saying, like that's something that seems very obvious now, but at the time, 11, 12 years ago, tech companies were valued at an all-time low. Like Apple had the same PE ratio as the average company in the stock market. So the thesis at the time was, all right, this software eating will start in industries that are more tech forward, potentially in geographies that have more internet and smartphone penetration. But over time, all industries, all geographies will be reimagined from a software first lens. And we have seen that play out dramatically, right? I just looked up the stats this morning. How many smartphone users in 2008 and 2009? Only 25 million. Now we're up to 6.5 billion, most of the world. So the entire globe across most industries is reachable to be reimagined from a software first lens. Stands to reason it would need much, much more capital to back some of those companies that are going to come in the future. So how are we going to invest the $9 billion? We invest across all industries, financial services, which is near and dear to my heart, infrastructure, real estate, insurance, do enterprise, everything from SaaS to space travel, consumer, food delivery, gaming, bio, crypto, and then across all stages. We write $25,000 checks up to several hundred thousand from our growth stage. And if you look at, we believe in the future and we bet the firm that way, which is one of our core tenets. There will be new industries that we haven't thought of. Most topically, LATAM is a big part of those plans. We've been fortunate to be investing in some great entrepreneurs in the region for the last several years now. I wish we'd gotten there even earlier, but we're trying to make up for some lost time. And so what's the opportunity? Like, for example, I spend all my time in financial services, and I think this is one industry that is just getting started in terms of software adoption and being more digitized. Take the Latin American opportunity specifically. Many of you in the audience would know these stats, right? There's usually 4 to 5 banks that have 80% of the market share, and they maybe serve 15 to 20% of the population. And then they are very profitable doing so. They're some of the highest return on equities in the world. So from the perspective of, your margin is my opportunity, to use the famous quote, lots of margin to eat into from some new companies. Consumer opportunities, everyone now has a smartphone in their pocket that can deliver banking services. Infrastructure, all companies are looking to add financial services. We need those companies too. Most importantly, we need all of you in the room, because those are the smart CEOs and the entrepreneurs that are going to start those next generation of companies. And we hope to make a lot more investments from Andreessen Horowitz across all sectors in Latin America. If I were there live, I would love to meet many of you. Luckily, my partner Gabriel is there live. And so hopefully many of you will get a chance to meet with him.
Oh, by the way, what's that image that we see behind you?
Yes, this is my closest attempt to be there with you guys. So next time, hopefully a little better. This was some friend sent it to me to make me feel a little more in the loop. All right, now I get to throw it back at Sergio. So you teed this up a little bit, right? Like it feels like we're at an inflection point in the region. Like the entrepreneurship ecosystem is buzzing. All the investors now are talking about Latin America. And so maybe a two-pronged question. One, what is different about starting a company today versus, when you started your first company? And then, is this really an inflection point, or has this just been going on all the time and this is just global investors waking up to an opportunity that's been under their noses?
Okay, when we started the first company, which was a long time ago, 22 years ago actually, there was no VC money around. And the very few checks that were around were mostly, back then actually in Argentina, and it was very, very hot Argentina at the time. But essentially, it was very hard to find VC money, and there are many reasons for that. Probably the most important reason was that there was the perspective of exits, of selling companies. So if you cannot sell the company, then VCs are not interested in investing unless there is going to be a possibility of an exit within whatever, 2, 3, 5, 10 years maximum. So it was completely different. Once someone asked me, even more recently, even when we started dLocal, someone once asked me, why did you decide to start the company bootstrapped? And I said, we didn't decide it. Money was not available, and we built a company to be profitable. And I think that when you build a company with your own money, and when your goal is not to sell the company, but to be profitable, it's a completely different mindset. You take a different care of the money. It's your money. You're much more frugal. And it's a completely different way of working. I think today it's much more challenging because you're going to a fight actually with a knife, and the other guy has a tank. So I'm not sure if it's possible today. But yeah, it was a very, very different environment. And to your second question, I think that, yes, we're in an inflection point. We see lots of, in the last, I would say in the last 3 years, I'm getting, or maybe 2 years, every week I'm getting a call from an investor saying, we want to invest in the region. Which opportunities do you see? Can you point us to some great entrepreneurs? So I think it's a very big change, and I hope it's here to stay. So maybe I'll go with a question to you, speaking about startups. When you are going to invest in a startup, what do you look for? Do you look at the team, at the opportunity, at the industry? What differentiates a good opportunity from a not so good one?
Yeah, at the so I think it is here to stay. There's so much opportunity, and the entrepreneurs are amazing. And so from a evaluation perspective, at the earliest stages, it's mostly about the team. But what does that really mean? So we spend a lot of time talking about something we'll call like founder market fit or founder idea fit. As Noam said before me, like startups are really hard. And even the ones that end up looking incredibly successful at the end, when you dig in, you'll find out, they were almost out of money for 2 weeks, or other really big challenges. And so a lot of conversations around like, why are you solving or trying to solve this particular problem? Because when the going gets really tough, like you just have to feel that you need to make this work. Versus it being more of an intellectual type of exercise. By the way, I recommend all of you asking your investors the same question too, because you want to pick people that are going to be in the trenches with you. They're going to proactively think about how they can help you with your particular company. And so they have to be pretty excited about, solving this problem for the long term also. And so like an example of that, and one of my favorite that happens often in financial services is, the CEO or the soon-to-be CEO will be part of a company and they will be looking for a solution to solve X, and they can't find it. And so they end up building this piece of infrastructure that takes them a long time to do. And then they realize, well, there's other companies that are also looking to solve that problem, and there's no vendor out there. And so they've felt this pain point, they've solved this pain point. They often then, either go to start a company that looks something like that or some variation of that. And so that's starting to happen across a variety of different industries. Other examples are just, has the CEO and the founding team studied the market extensively? Are they just this interesting historian that knows what's worked, what hasn't worked? There's sort of the famous story of the founders of Brex. They went and they sought out, the founder of Visa D. Hawk on his ranch off in, the obscure rural area to just really get his ideas around lessons he's learned that might not be more public. And so we'll just look for things like that. And then I guess the third, and anyone who started a company or been in a company would know, is you just have to consistently materialize labor and capital. You're always selling. So at the earliest stages, it's who have you convinced to join you, be it employees, be it advisors, be it sort of early customers. So that's very much around the team. Around the idea, also important, but understanding at the early stages that often pivots a lot. Two main things, just market size, and that's easier said than done from both sides, right? There's a famous story of the Collisons, Patrick Collison, when he was pitching Stripe, very, very early days, when asked, hey, who are you going to sell to? What's your market size? And he famously said, oh, my customers don't exist yet. And he was right. They were all the new e-commerce companies that were going to be cropping up, right? But you had to be pretty forward thinking. And there's a lot of very smart people that passed on it very early days because they just didn't see the TAM. And then second part, some kind of theory on defensibility, right? Either it's network, you've discovered something that other people don't understand that's really hard to do. And I think you put all of those types of things together, and there's lots of great teams that have some and not others. And I just, if I'm an entrepreneur in the audience, I would take that lens, understand what investors are looking for, but then also sort of evaluate your investors along the same lines, because you very much want people on board with your company that are very believers in what you're doing.
That's very interesting.
All right, so you guys are going to hear from Sumita a little bit later on the whole dLocal story. So I decided that I would skip the actual company bits and use this as an excuse to focus a little bit more on the personal side. So again, Sergio, because I have so many questions for you, you get the 2-for-1. Can you talk, give us just a bit of a lens into your entrepreneurial journey? And I recommend that the 2-hour version of this is infinitely more interesting, but since we don't have quite as much time. And then talk about, you've spent a lot of time, especially in the last several years, helping other CEOs, building community, like we can see with this conference, just some of your thinking there and what you've done.
Yeah, about my entrepreneurial journey, it actually started quite late. I started my first company, I was 37 years old. And it was in partnership with my wife, which is something that I don't recommend. She's over here. Hi. And I don't recommend it because you need, as you said, starting a company is very, very hard work. And you need to have a safe space where you can go home and disconnect from the work that takes all the space. And besides, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of, in our case, we were financing our own venture, so we put our financial situation under stress, which is again not a good idea. We're talking about 22 years ago. Then my second company, we started with my first co-founder. He's 11 years older than I am. And actually that's a formula which I do recommend a lot. I think that the partnership between people with the big age differences add a lot of value, because one of them brings more experience, the other one is more energetic, one of them has lots of contacts. The younger one normally has more industry or more technical expertise. He's fresher with the new tools and trends, and can devote a lot of more time. So it's a proposition that worked out very well for us. And it also worked very well for us in the following startups. Andres, my co-founder at the local, he's, I'm not sure, 14 or 15 years younger than I am, and Seba is even younger. So that combination worked very well for us. We started Unihotel, did very well, and at one point, there was this project that I wanted to start inside of Unihotel, which was selling virtual phone numbers. And I was very frustrated because in my own company, I couldn't start that project. And it's very common. I saw it so many times. You need to serve customers, you need to launch products, there are so many things that you need to do. And there is this project that you really believe in, but it's so hard to devote the resources and pay attention to. And Andres came along. He had just sold part of his previous company, and he was looking for something to do. And I said, okay, let's do this in partnership. And that's how we launched Jet Numbers, which was the first company that we started together. And then we started AstroPay, and then G-Local, and so on. But again, when you have someone that is so much younger than you, you become, in a way, a mentor. And I like that, and that's, in a way, how we started. And then we saw more and more of those opportunities. I became involved with Endeavor, which is a network to help others and to receive help from others. And then later on, I started to invest in companies, and I get a lot of enjoyment and of pleasure out of seeing companies that you help mentor growing. They say that the biggest realization for someone in academia is not getting a Nobel Prize, but it's when your mentored gets a Nobel Prize. It's even more comfortable. It's like when, as a father, when you see your child succeed. So I hope that answered your question. So let me ask.
Thank you.
I'll send you on your way back to investment. We see lots of investment action in the biggest markets, which are Mexico, in Latin America, are Mexico and Brazil mainly. But in the last couple of years, we are starting to see action in the smaller markets. So my question for you is, what advice would you give to a company coming out of a country that is not Brazil or Mexico?
Yep. So I'm very bullish on companies not coming out of Brazil or Mexico. And it's obvious why, investors might look there first, right? Just from a pure population standpoint, Brazil and Mexico have maybe, half of the region. And the advantage to starting in one of these countries is you can create a large business, to state the obvious, and never leave the country. The disadvantage is to be a really big business, you evidently have to serve multiple countries. And we can think of lots of examples of companies that have been in Mexico for a long time and have tried to expand to Brazil. It hasn't worked, and vice versa. And multiple reasons for that. But I think one of the strong advantages in starting in a market that is obviously too small to create a large business, let's take Uruguay, for example, population fewer than 4 million people, is you have to think multi-country and global right from the start. So versus, having to retrofit that into your product that's been around for 4 or 5 years, that comes very much from the design. And so I think just advice to entrepreneurs, and I see this often, it's you're no longer pitching the, X for Uruguay or the X for Ecuador. You're pitching the, hey, I understand my home market very, very well. I'm going to be able to get it to a proof point incredibly fast. And then you're forced to think from day one, how do we roll out to these bigger markets? And I think you can pitch that global nature from the start as a strong advantage. One country that's done this very well, we just saw from Noam, is Israel. You're not going to be the X of Israel. By definition, you definitely go a little bit further out. All right, one back at you, Sergio. So One of the things that we've discussed, and it's in boardrooms and entrepreneur rooms all over the world, is it's great that we're starting to see increasingly diverse founders. We want to see even more diverse founders. So maybe just what advice, do you have for founders in general, but then anything specific to founders who may not have as many role models that, look specifically like them?
Okay, it's a tough question. It's an interesting question. I think that I personally would like to see many more female entrepreneurs. We don't see enough of them. And I think that I would encourage very much women to take the plunge and to go and start up companies. First of all, there are role models. Sometimes you need to look a bit more, but there are some super interesting role models. I personally have invested in 3 different companies led by women, and they tend to be different type of leaders, but they can be very, very effective leaders. And the other thing is that there are whole segments of over 50% of the consumers are women. So by definition, it's very hard to a man to put himself in the shoes of a female buyer, especially if it's a product like, skincare, which is one that I'm involved in. And the other thing is that there are so many resources today specifically catered to female or ethnic minority entrepreneurs. So I would very much encourage, especially women, to look for those resources and get help. And again, if we look at Endeavor, there is lots of help over there. And even normally, sometimes people are ashamed of asking for help or are afraid of sharing a business idea because they are afraid that it may be stolen. And I think that in most cases, no one, you can tell this very secret idea and no one will steal it because most people think that their own idea is better. So I think, again, there are so many resources, and I'd be very happy to help more female entrepreneurs. So a last one for you, because we are running out of time. Can you imagine yourself, do you see A16Z investing in a Uruguayan startup?
Since I used that example, I would love to invest in Uruguayan startups. Again, I have a bias towards having to think.
You have a line of people waiting here. They want to pitch to you.
Perfect. Did I mention my partner Gabriel is in the audience with you also? So I would be happy to speak with you, but he could also speak with you live. All right, I got one final for you, Sergio. Since you can read a lot about you on the web, what is something that we don't know about you that might surprise us?
Secrets. One thing is that I'm very passionate about biotechnology. When I started studying computer science, actually I thought about genetic engineering at the time. I didn't go that way. And I'm super excited. I'm especially excited about that field now. I think that biotechnology today is where software was maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And I really want to kickstart the biotechnology industry in Uruguay. And I'll be trying to help in that.
Fantastic.
Okay, Angela, thank you very much for your time. It was great having you here. We look forward to having you here in person. And we look forward to seeing A16Z investing in Uruguay.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to meeting many of you in the near future.
Thank you.